Now that we have a pretty good database class that will connect to the database for us, I want us to write our second object, which is going to be our user class. And the user class will make use of the database class to connect to the database. And all of the information about finding users will go in our user class. Now we could put those in the database class. In fact, some developers do. But the database class might start to get quite large if we had a lot of different finds going on. Instead, since these belong to the user, they're unique to the user, it makes more sense to put them there, to group our code according to the user object. So I'm just going to open up index.php here. What we want to do is try to move these 3 lines of code into a class so that all of that finding is handled by the class. And instead, what we'll end up with is something kind of like this. I'll just put ... for now. So basically, the found user will ask the class to do something, and it'll return the found user in one line. That's it. And then we can start to pull information like username out of it. So let's create the class and figure out how we can call it to return that found user. I'm going to create a new file in TextMate, and I'll just go ahead and save that, and I'll name it user.php, singular, and we'll put our PHP tags, and class user, singular. That's the way we want to do objects, is with a singular name. If we have many of them, they would be users, but the singular version of the class is just one. And it's also a good idea at the top here to go ahead and require the database, because we're going to be needing the database so that user can make those calls. And even though back over here in index, we're still saying load the database, it's okay to do it with require once a second time, because it'll say, oh, I've already done that, and it'll skip it. But since it's a dependency of the class, it's a good idea to go ahead and have it here at the top. It's just smart programming. Now inside my class, I'm going to go ahead and paste 2 methods, which I think will look very familiar to you. The first one is findAll, and you'll notice that I'm using global to pull in the database so I can work with it. We talked about global. It brings in the database variable from the global scope so that we can use it, and then I'm going to ask that database to perform a query for me. And here's my query, just simply find all from users. That returns a result set, and I simply return the result set back to whatever called this method. The second is find by ID. It's basically the same thing, except that it takes an ID. SQL is slightly different, and it goes ahead and does the fetch array on the result set. We're going to have to do that up here. We're going to have to perform fetch array each time we go through and fetch a new array. But if we're only returning one, there's only one object inside this wrapper, there's no sense in returning both the object and the wrapper. Go ahead and just take it out of its wrapper and hand back just the array that we'll work with. So I've just called it found for now. So I'll save this file. There are 2 ways that we can go about this, and I want us to see both of them. The first, I want you to notice that this right here is an instance method. We talked about the difference between instance methods and static methods or class methods earlier. This is an instance method, which means in order to call it, I need to have an instance. So before I can call found user, I've got to say user equals new user, just to have an instance of it. And then I can ask that instance, capital user, find all. That will then find that user. Or if I want to just find one, let's do that instead. That's a better example. Find by ID 1. So I've instantiated it, then used that instance to call this method that returns it. Now, a lot of times you'll see programmers do it this way. Now, there's nothing that's inherently wrong about doing it this way. If you prefer it this way, or if you're already used to doing it this way, or maybe someone else's code is done that way, it's not necessarily wrong. However, I think that the better way to do it is to use static that we talked about before and make these into class methods. A class method, the difference is that the function sticks around, it's static, it sticks around, even when we don't have an instance. So then we no longer have to instantiate it. Instead, we can use our double dot notation and just ask the class directly, hey class, run your find by ID method. And it returns the value found user, and then we can do the username on it. Let's go ahead and try that. Let's just put in a echo HR tag here, just to separate it. And let's load up Firefox, and let's hit reload. Oh, class user not found. That's because I didn't include it up here. So I'm also going to need to, of course, require once user. That was a silly mistake on my part. Let's just go back to Firefox and try again. And there we are. So if we step through what happened here, the database class was defined, then it was instantiated and assigned to the variable database. Then we define the user class. When we get down here, we use the static method to search the database to find ID 1, returns that, and then we're able to say, all right, give me your username out of your row. can also try our find all method. If you take a look here, I'm just going to do another static call to find all, return it to the user set. We'll then need to do database fetch array on each one and return it to the value user, and then go through each one and list the username, first name, last name. You can pause it if you need more time to copy that down, but I'm going to go ahead and try it out. Switch over to Firefox, and there we are. Username K. Skoglund, name Kevin Skoglund. So with a very small amount of code in our class definition, we were actually able to clean up all of this messy SQL that was going on here and make it something nice and clean. User find by one. It makes it really clear. It's a good narrative to our code. I'm going to make one more change here. I'm just going to paste in another function, which is find by SQL. So this will just take any SQL we send it and perform that on the database. That's a useful one to have because we might not always want to just find a single one or find all of them. We might want to find a subset. So find by SQL might come into use in that case. In fact, on your own, what I'd like you to do is rewrite find all and find by ID so that they use find by SQL. And keep in mind that they're static methods. So you want to make sure that you call it statically. And then in the next movie, we'll look at how we can improve this class further by using instantiation on the results that come back from the database.